Welcome to Under the Lens. Come and enjoy an extraordinary, raw, and unfiltered podcast that delivers debate, discussions, and interviews about film, pop culture, and everything in between. Here is your host, film critic and journalist, Byron Lafayette.
Welcome to the program. As you've just heard, Under the Lens is a raw and unfiltered podcast where we share our opinions with no apologies. Today, I have as my guest, fellow podcaster and my friend J.B Huffman. Today, we're going to be talking about the James Bond film you never saw, namely 2009's The International. The picture stars Clive Owen, Naomi Watts, Armin Mueller-Stahl, and Ulrich Thompson. The plot follows Interpol agent Louis Salinger, who joins forces with a New York prosecutor, Eleanor Whitman, to put an end to a powerful bank's funding of terrorism. As they follow the money from Germany to Italy to New York and to Turkey, Salinger and Whitman find their own lives are at risk from those who will stop at nothing to protect their interests. The picture earned a 58% positive rating on Rotten Tomatoes and made $60 million worldwide on a $50 million budget, hence why we are calling it the James Bond film you never saw. So without further ado, let's get started. JB, what were some of your initial thoughts on this picture?
Oh, man. I want to back up real quick because I agreed to do this show saying that I remember watching this with my wife, and then I started watching it and I realized I had never seen this film.
Oh.
But I think I was getting it confused with the fact that I did see Duplicity with my wife, which was with Clive Owen and Julia Roberts back in the day. And then I also saw Shoot 'Em Up, which came out not too long after that. But anyway, so I get a lot of Clive Owen like spy movies mixed up. Hence why I've always thought he would have been a better Bond than Daniel Craig. But we're gonna leave that there. Initial thoughts, man. This film was absolutely like, just from start to finish, it kept you on the edge of the seat, the edge of your seat, and it was like the shootouts were just so thrilling, and Clive Owen and Naomi Watts in this film are just so perfect. Like, just, I don't know. There's a little bit of corniness here and there with some of the side actors, but for the most part, this is like, top-notch action thriller spy type film. Like you said, it's a James Bond film for sure.
No, that's it's exactly how I feel, because like I rewatched it last night because I remember I saw it when it first came out in theaters in 2009, and I feel like I probably maybe saw it on DVD like once since then or so. And I just remember that I always liked it. And so, I thought, well, I'm gonna rewatch it, before this episode and stuff. And I agree with you that I was like, I was just kind of blown away by just the production values and just how well it was put together. And exactly what you said, like it's a James Bond movie. And it kind of almost reminded me a little bit of like what a James Bond story would be that's completely like stripped down almost. That it's like, you take away the fancy gadgets,
Oh
you
yeah.
take you take away all that kind of stuff. And it's like, what would Bond be like if he existed in our world? Because I think a lot of the James Bond movies, even the Daniel Craig ones, are, hyper stylized, they exist in a world that's kind of like ours, but a little bit off center.
Right.
Where the International kind of feels like, hey, this is what he'd be like, if he worked for Interpol, in 2009.
Yeah, I mean, I guess it helps that he's doing all of this in New York, and it's showing like the landscape of the city that even if I've never been to New York, but like I've seen different. I mean, I've watched enough movies that I know what things look like. So I think it just kind of brought it closer to home to us. With James Bond being a British spy, with this film, it was like you see like overhead shots of the Hudson and the Brooklyn Bridge and like all the buildings, and just like, and a lot of landmarks that he's, and the cinematography in this film is top notch. Like, like I'm just watching this like, man, this is a heck of a film. But yeah, I think the landscape of New York City, even if you've never been there, which I haven't, it kind of brings it closer to home to us. And like you said, it's like what would James Bond be like if he was, in our world? And so
Mhm.
that's kind of how. It's a good point there.
Oh, thanks. Yeah, it's I feel the same way. Like the cinematography was so incredible, and it was kind of like it was almost like the cinematography was so good that I was like having to like remind myself to be following the narrative sometimes because like I was so enthralled with the visuals of it.
Hmm.
And in some ways, it almost felt like the visuals were kind of as much a participant in the story as like the script was in a lot of ways. Just with the way it was telling the story and just the shots and angles and everything. Um, but I agree with you that like when they shot like New York, it felt like even though if you'd never been there, it kind of felt like you were familiar with it at the same time.
Right.
Because you saw these like huge monuments, like you said, like the Guggenheim and stuff like that. But then you also saw like little like deli bodegas, as well.
Right. Exactly.
And it was like, and you kind of saw like a little bit of everything. And uh, two actually interesting points that I was reading when I was reading some trivia about this film was that two areas that they filmed in that they said they filmed guerrilla style, and the one was in that scene in New York when they're trailing the hitman. It's when they're by the empty lot that apparently they'd said that not everybody there were extras. Like, it was just, like, kind of them filming on the street. So, it was just a lot of cars and people just going about their daily lives, and they said the same thing happened, when they were in Turkey, in the market at the end when he's, chasing, Scarson. That they said that basically none of those people worked for them, that they took one camera, and they basically, like, told Clive Owen, they're like, "Okay, you go chase him through the market," and they were just, like, following after him, filming him, and, like, Clive Owen said he was a little freaked out because he's like, "I'm running through the market holding a gun, and none of these people, like, know that we're filming." It was like, you know?
Oh
And,
my gosh.
and it was just like, the director, Tom Tykwer, he was just like kinda like a madman in a lot of ways, but I don't know, I feel like he did, like, such a good job, with crafting the story.
Yeah, I remember I watched. See, I actually, what's funny is I told you I'd never seen this film, but I actually owned the DVD. I think I had gotten it like, several years ago, probably right after it came out, but I'd never actually watched it. Back when I used to actually still buy DVDs. Now
Uh-huh.
I've switched to better mediums, but anyway, so I had it and I watched it on Prime, but then I pulled out my DVD and I was like, I want to watch some of these extras, and I watched like a making of like the Guggenheim scene, like some behind the scenes stuff, and they were talking about how they wanted Clive Owen, whenever they had that shootout, to be kind of like a fish out of water and not really know how to use a gun, but he just like picks it up and just starts, like shooting like he knows what he's doing, and then they kind of went with it, and they're like, well, you know what, if this guy's like at the end of his rope and like is feeling all this stress and weight bearing down on him, yeah, maybe he can kind of pick up some skills and know how to use this gun, you know what I mean, like, and just and turn into this, when somebody's faced with death, I mean, a lot of times adrenaline can work and turn you into like this killing machine that you never knew existed, and that's what happened in the film. Like, that's, I guess they kind of did an audible there and decided that's what they were going to do. So
That's really
that was kind of cool.
Oh, that is very cool because that is interesting because thinking of that scene with him, as a fish out of water, I feel like that scene probably wouldn't have worked as well because, you know, um, that whole, shootout scene was, I mean, I want to say it was probably one of the best, like, gunfights I've seen in a movie in a long time. Like, I was trying in my mind to think of, like, pairing it up, like, okay, what are some other ones that were good? And I feel like there was probably a few within, like, the Matrix films that, were probably as good. But, like, thinking of just contemporary action movies, I was like, I can't really think of one that matches the grandeur and the horror and just the thematic elements of that shootout. I mean, It
I
was
mean,
it was wild.
Tombstone was pretty epic, though. I will say
Mhm.
that.
Oh,
I rewatched that recently, like so. It was just like I watched Tombstone and this in the same week. So like, man, two epic shootouts.
oh, Tombstone is a great movie. I haven't seen that for a number of years. I have the Blu-ray, and I've been meaning to check that one out again because I love westerns, and that's one of my favorites. And now that you're saying that, I do remember that shootout was pretty epic. Because it takes a lot of skill to film a shootout.
Hmm.
And, and especially, like, with the Guggenheim too, like, the way it was laid out, the way it was built, it's not like a traditional, place of where you can hide, there's running, there's, moving and ducking and stuff, and it was amazing, and I was also, impressed as well with that particular shootout scene, near the end when he, shoots the art display down that collapses.
Hmm.
And when I was reading up on the film that they mentioned that was almost all done with CGI.
Nice.
And I was impressed because when I was seeing it, I was like, man, for like a film in 2009, I was like, that's like pretty impressive,
Yeah.
CGI,
Uh-huh.
and there's a couple of moments you could tell and stuff, but for the most part, it looked fairly realistic.
Hmm.
Wasn't like Iron Man's floating head in Civil War,
Hmm.
uh, you know, um, but that was like kind of another thing that I really did like about the movie was that I felt like it was able to balance kind of the thrilling action with the slower moving elements of the plot,
Hmm.
because I don't know if you felt this way, but it felt very much kind of like those the paranoid thrillers from the 70s. Um, like I'm trying to think of ones like the Parallax View, those type of ones. It felt very similar to that. I don't know if you felt that way as well.
Yeah, I watched the Parallax View, and yeah, I can definitely see that for sure. One thing that like really, and we were talking about it earlier off air, but you were talking about the visual effects, but uh, this film was cutting edge, like at the time for visual effects and also practical effects. Like they actually constructed this Guggenheim building like to scale from this world class Frank Lloyd Wright architecture. like, like literally built this thing like, and it looks identical. I mean, it's probably not, but yeah, I mean, they were walking on it. Like, so like, yeah, the visual effects and the practical effects of them actually doing this, like with this real building and everything, was just, I don't know, like definitely ahead of its time. And I know that nowadays, like guys like Chris Nolan, they love doing stuff like that. Spending a ton of money on legit practical effects. But man, this was back in the day. This was definitely some cutting edge stuff.
No, I agree, because, they did a very good job with constructing that set for the Guggenheim because, honestly, like if I wouldn't have known that they constructed it just watching it, it looked like they filmed there. I mean, just like, it's
Right.
like the first time I remember when I saw it in 2009, I was like, wow, they let them film in the Guggenheim. It's
Uh
like
huh.
that's what I thought.
Uh
It's
huh.
like, you know, um and it's pretty impressive what they were able to do, especially considering a lot of films with practical effects now they're huge blockbusters, 150, 200 million, and this is like a tiny film for like $50 million. It's like not
Mm-hmm.
that huge,
Mm-hmm.
um and it was incredible, and, kind of like leading into that a little bit too, one thing that kind of surprised me as well was because I wasn't terribly familiar with the director Tom Tickwer's like work. So I went onto like IMDb and I was kind of looking him up and stuff. And I was kind of amazed to find out that his main, I guess you could say his main career in Hollywood is as a composer. Uh, and
Yeah.
he's directed movies here and there, but then I was like, man, he composed The Matrix 4 that's coming out in December,
Uh huh.
and he's worked with the Wachowskis a lot, and stuff, and I was like, after seeing this movie, I was like, man, why hasn't he gotten more work? I was like, give the man a James Bond movie, like
Right.
You know?
Yeah.
Oh, and it was just it was wild, but um, yeah, I'd like to segue over. We can chat a little bit about the characters I found very interesting in this movie. Um, because a lot of action movies that I find, sometimes the characters seem very, one dimensional. And they're just like the archetype here or there. And there was a little bit of that, in this movie.
Hmm.
But I felt like the characters were a bit more complex with kind of some of their motivations and such.
Oh yeah, definitely. It was. Yeah, I mean that's an excellent point. Like I think Salinger was like, he was conflicted in that, he wanted to see this all the way to the end, but then like you just kind of think of him as this kind of guy that's when you think of him as one dimensional, and that he's like he has this goal of you know taking this guy to justice, right? Taking this bank to justice, and um, at the end, he has this moment where he stops and says, before I keep going, and he goes to Naomi Watts to Whitman and says, "You've got to leave because, I'm going down this rabbit hole and I'm not taking you with me." Like, I don't know. That's a moment for me where I kind of felt that he was more than just this. Um, I'm trying to think of the best word for it. Like task oriented kind of guy. Like he
Hmm.
he also understands. He has empathy for other people, saying, "Hey, look, um, I don't want you to go down the same rabbit trail that I am. You have a family that you need to go to, and I don't want this to, do anything with your future." So, but I don't know. I just the fact that he stopped in the middle of that was pretty cool to me. Yeah, go ahead. What?
Yeah, I liked that. I liked that scene as well because 'cause like you said, he'd kind of been the man on a mission, throughout most of the film.
Hmm.
And I remember, the scene in question, where he basically is saying like, I'm a bridge that you need to burn, basically.
Oh man.
It's like, and
Oh
I was
my
like, oh,
gosh.
you know, I remember that
Yes.
line, really hit me, and I was like, oh man, that was, and one thing that I appreciated too with the characters and with the script as well was that sometimes I've noticed with movies with characters that they tend to almost like, shove characters into scenes when they don't necessarily need to be there just because they're like, "Oh, this is the actor in the film, they have to be there." And I kind of respected the movie that basically they kind of wrote Naomi Watts out of the movie after that scene, basically.
Hmm.
And, I I respected that they were like, "Okay, she served her purpose, and now we're gonna follow him to the end," instead of, like, having it like, "Oh, she's gonna chase after him. Oh, she's gonna get in the way," in the climax or whatever. I liked that they didn't do that they didn't follow that kind of blueprint that you see in a lot of other movies,
Hmm.
you know? The other character that I really liked, 2 characters actually, but the first one was, I really liked, Colonel Wexler,
Mm.
was played by, Armin, Mueller-Stahl. Great character actor, and, he's had quite a career, in German television theater and American, theater and film. And I felt like it was interesting because his character starts out where you just kinda see him as like, oh, he's just, he's either like, like this Nazi type character or a communist or whatever, but then you kind of find out more about his, the tragicness of his life,
Mhm.
you know? And I don't know, I liked how they used him as an example of kind of how certain things can happen that make us give up our ideals, and turn our backs on them. I found that very interesting.
Yeah, he's definitely a conflicted character. Like he kind of feels like you can feel the fact that he's pulling, you know, two separate ways, and to the end, like you can't tell what side he's on until the end. So like yeah, he's definitely somebody that you can kind of empathize with,
Mhm.
because I think we can all kind of fall into that, this way or that way kind of. I'm at a loss for words on that.
No, I agree because like I was almost like I was thinking about it like at work today a little bit and stuff, and like I almost kind of felt like in some ways that like Colonel Wexler was, I don't know, that he felt almost like another side of a coin to Salinger a little bit. That it kind of felt like if Salinger went down a certain path, that he could end up exactly like Colonel Wexler.
Oh, for
Um,
sure,
you know,
exactly.
yeah, because 'cause they're both like were men of ideals, and then kind of like
Mm.
things happened, and then they ended up moving. And so I think it was kind of interesting because I feel like the film kind of didn't, you know, it purposefully kind of didn't give you closure with Salinger. If anything, it kind of purposely took that closure away from him. It's like,
Yeah.
I love how, it makes you think that he has, killed, the villain, and then you find out, no, he didn't, and it's
Yeah,
like, you
exactly.
know, um, and, there was a part in the movie that I liked that it was glossed over very quickly. But I remember when Wexler was, telling him you have to go outside the system of justice, whatever, but he's like, there's going to be collateral damage.
Mm.
And, there wasn't a huge amount into that, but I remember after the lawyer is killed by the Calvini brothers, that there's this one kind of throwaway line where I think it's Wexler tells Salinger, he said, "Oh, the lawyer's family has disappeared." And he said, "Oh, yeah, I told you there would be collateral." And I was like, "Oh," and I was like, "Man," I was like, so basically, like, his actions, ended up resulting in, possibly the deaths of a bunch of other people.
Yeah, she just like predicted it. Yeah,
Mhm. Yeah.
yeah. It always happens. Like
Mhm.
we live up to our destiny, so to say.
No, that's very true, like, our consequences,
Oh yeah, for sure.
and, you know and that was something I found interesting too, that the film didn't try and do too, that it didn't try and give us outright good and outright bad. Like, because I feel like especially the three major or the four major characters, Salinger, Whitman, Wexler, and Scarson, I think was the villain.
Yeah.
That all of them, besides Whitman, are pretty much very gray people. Whitman is kind of the only one who I would say is kind of a heroic character. Um, because all of the other ones make gray decisions, and like you see the villain, you see him with his family and his kids,
Hmm.
and he's very much he's in a warm house, he's not he's not this kind of like, cold calculating killer that you kind of think of him as.
Yeah, and this might be changing the subject, but there was a question I wanted to ask you.
Mhm.
Um, talking about like I think you were talking about how they didn't really dive into who's right and who's wrong or good bad or whatever. They was just kind of indifferent to everything. Um, but do you feel like I just remember going back to where it says closer to the beginning where it's talking about how the biggest moneymaker in conflict is the debt that it causes.
Mm,
Um, and like it's just talking about how the bank is capitalizing um, on the conflict that happens with war and the money that it costs and the debt that it causes. So I guess my question to you is: do you feel like this film is an anti capitalist propaganda type film?
mm. That's a great question, honestly. That's a very, very good question. Because interestingly enough, I remember, because this came out 2009. So
Hmm.
it was being filmed right around the time of
Right when the bubble.
right when the bubble burst. And so it's kind of interesting because you think about it, and it's like, okay, so the script and everything was being written before the bubble burst, but it
Hmm.
released, afterwards. And it kind of came out at a time when it wasn't very popular to like attack banks. Like I remember when I saw it in theaters, exactly what you said. I was kinda like, "Oh, man, this is, like, kinda anti-capitalist," It's like, and, and back then I was in, university and, I was very into the whole political stuff I was a political science major, so I was all into that kinda stuff, and so it kinda bothered me a little bit because I liked the movie, but I was kinda like it bothered me a bit, but I feel like there was definitely purpose in what they were doing, like, there was some aspects where, they took some of the storyline from the true life, bank. I think it was the BCC, I think, from the '80s that was a kind of like an evil, bank that funded terrorism and everything like that.
Hmm.
Um, but yeah, it really was kinda telling, this message that our lives are controlled basically by entities that we are not even aware of, really, you know?
Hmm.
And it kinda left you of kinda like, well, they were viewing it as, "Okay, is it bad? Is it good?" But they were kinda showing this is the result of it basically, of people who are funding, "Oh, we want whatever is in this African nation, so we're gonna fund their coup," no matter how many people die.
Hmm.
Um, and it even kind of made me think about, even with, like, student loan debt, now and stuff, that it's like, if you control that debt, you really do
Mm,
control the world,
yeah.
So, so
You
I
know, that's
definitely
kind
think
of
there was that. Mhm,
now economics is kind of a double edged sword. Like, people, it's you either have you're either being controlled by big businesses or you're being controlled by the government, and there's really not much room in between.
mhm.
Like,
That's very true. Mhm,
especially with the political spectrum that we're on now
mhm,
in America. Like, one side, I, I don't know. I'm not going to get political,
yeah.
but like,
Hey, we're an unfiltered podcast,
oh yeah, a lot of people want to trash talk capitalism, and I'm like, you know what?
Mhm,
You can keep it in check very minimalistically,
mhm,
and things will just work. Adam Smith describes the invisible hand in his book, The Wealth of Nations, and anybody who's taken any economics class has heard that. Um, but I'm definitely capitalist,
mhm,
like always have been, always will be.
mhm,
And anybody who tries to argue with it, I'm like, well, okay, look, you can say that you don't trust big businesses, you think they're greedy, and blah 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 blah. Well, you know what? If you go away from that, you're going to get into elected and unelected officials who are pretty much controlling your lives.
mhm,
Um, because they have taken on everybody's debts and everybody's money and you're dependent on them. Like,
mhm.
so which way do you want it? Like, do you want these people who've never had a job a day in their life to to control your life, or do you want people who have actually worked to get to where they are to control the world? You know what I mean? Like,
Mhm.
that's why I will always be a capitalist because like I trust these people more than the others.
No, I 100% agree with you because like I generally consider myself somewhat of a libertarian,
Yeah,
and so so I will always be a capitalist as well, because at the end of the day, capitalism affords us more freedom than the alternative,
right.
and it allows there to be competition and such. And like you said, there is a dark side, of course, that you have bad people who are going to use it to control people, but on the opposite coin, even though there are those people who are going to be controlling by having that free market system, those people are not always gonna be in control because somebody else can always come up to, destabilize, and they even showed that a little bit in, I wanna say in the newspaper clippings that they showed at the end of the film, that they were
Hmm.
showing how, like, "Oh, this other bank was rising up, this one over here," and, they showed, like, oh, the Calvini brothers, wouldn't sell him the missiles, but then he went to Suneye, who was gonna sell them to him.
Yep.
So it's like there's always going to be a check and a balance, I feel like, when there's capitalism, where
Hmm.
where if you go in that other direction, then you start to get a little bit more into where there's not as many choices, and I always err on the side of choice, you
Absolutely.
know. But yeah, to answer your first question though, I do think this film definitely had an edge of anti-capitalism to it. I think.
Hmm.
I don't feel like it was giving us an alternative of being like socialistic or communistic. I don't feel like it was that way at all. But it was showing us a dark side and saying like, okay, is this kind of really, really what we want?
Let's think
And
this through is
mhm.
basically kind of what they might have been laying out.
Exactly, yeah, because basically this was just showing us an episode in a never-ending story,
Hmm.
because at the end, the bank had restructured itself, it was showing record profits, and then it showed us, that Whitman was starting her investigation again, and so
Yeah,
it
exactly.
so in the end, it was gonna be this never-ending type of struggle, to take down, if not the IBBC, another bank,
Yeah, and I've been in banking and finance for 13 years,
Mm,
and I've seen the thing is when banks get too greedy, they start making bad decisions, and they end up having to get bailed out by a bigger bank.
mm,
So like, the FD the government slash
mhm,
the FDIC steps in and takes over the bank, and they end up having to get bought out and taken over. All their assets and liabilities get taken over by a bigger, stronger bank. So like it's just a never ending cycle. So
mhm,
like, I'm going to go back to what you were saying about like there's always somebody that's going to keep you in check.
mhm.
That's that's the invisible hand, my friend.
Uh-huh. Oh, man, so that's interesting, so with you being in finance, and banking and stuff, this, I'm assuming that gave you another lens basically when you were watching this film.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Mhm,
Not I've never been on the big like serious hardcore investment banking that they're talking about with investing in like you know missiles and stuff like
mhm.
I mean they were financing like you know government contracts and stuff so like but I mean still I can definitely see where they're coming from there like you're always going to capitalize on something that's going to make you money, and you can't fault people for that. Like it's not like they're sitting in their house and hoping and praying for another world war so they can make more money. Like, but if it does happen, hey, we're here. You know what I mean?
No, exactly, and that's what I think, when it comes down, with the defense contractors and everything that we've seen over the last 20 years, with the war on terror and everything that, yeah, there's always going to be somebody to take advantage, but at the same time, on the other side of the coin, it's helpful, because because you wouldn't have a lot of the elements of like, okay, well, would our soldiers have as good of equipment if there wasn't all of these, defense contractors?
Yeah, we need something to fight this war, and you need to make money to provide for your families. You know what I mean? Like
Hmm.
it's just the way it works. You know?
Hmm. No, that's absolutely, it's and that's what I appreciated so much, about like this film and this script was that it was telling even though, of course there was an edge of excitement and thrillerness to it. Um, and I know people are gonna say thrillerness is not a word, but I'm just gonna invent it right now.
Go on,
uh,
man, and
yeah,
get the words.
you know, um, that this film it felt very very much grounded, and it felt like it was really trying to tell a realistic story that was not going to necessarily have a happy ending. That that it was gonna subvert our expectations at the end.
Yeah.
There was a quote from Colonel Wexler, and it was when he was being interrogated by Salinger that I really felt kind of it kind of embodied what the entire film was telling us basically, where he said the difference between truth and fiction is fiction has to make sense.
Mhm. Mm. Yeah.
And I loved that quote.
That's very true.
Because yeah, because we try so hard to make life make sense,
Yeah.
And we try so hard for to put everything in. It's like, oh, the round, peg in the round hole, and it doesn't always work that way in life.
Yeah. Truth, a lot of times, is a lot crazier than anything that we can think of in our heads for fiction.
Hmm. That is absolutely it is absolutely true,
Like,
yeah.
and here's an example. Do you read any John Grisham?
I have, yes. Uh-huh.
Okay, so I've always been a big fan of his work, and he's done a lot of great legal thriller film or books or whatever. And but the craziest, most eye-opening thing that I've ever read from him was his one single work of nonfiction, and it was The Innocent Man. Have you read that?
I have not read that one.
Oh, dude, check it out. Like it's completely nonfiction. He studied this thing out. This actually happened in Ida, Oklahoma, and I actually know somebody who lived there when it happened. like it, dude, like
Mhm.
it makes you question everything that you've ever believed about the justice system. Like,
Wow.
yeah,
Oh.
it definitely changed, kind of reshaped my position on capital punishment, and I'm just
Mhm.
going to leave it at that.
Oh, I will definitely check that out because I enjoy those type of works, and I even though it can be uncomfortable, I enjoy those type of stories that kind of shows how things really are,
For
you
sure.
know, yeah. There was a friend of mine who and we were talking just about various things, that that the government does, and just like mistakes that are made and stuff. And we were kind of talking about how, there's, especially nowadays, how you see online, there's all these conspiracy theories and everything like that. And
Hmm.
and we were just kind of chatting about like, oh, what makes people, do these, like, conspiracy theories or believe in different stuff, or go down the rabbit hole, so to speak. And he made this really good point where he said, well, he said, I think sometimes, people want to embrace the conspiracy theory because it makes more sense than the truth.
Mm,
And, and I thought that it was, and that just, it reminded me of that, when he gave that quote, fiction has to make sense.
hmm.
That it can be very uncomfortable sometimes to just think like, well, that sometimes maybe there isn't a plan with everything, it's just happening,
Hmm.
you know. But yeah, so this was a film that, very much impressed me. And definitely when I went back and checked it out again, I felt it held up from the last time I saw it, which was probably, like I said, about 7-8 years ago or so. In the end, because I know, we both use, Letterboxd. What was the, final score that you ended up, putting for this film?
Um, I gave it a solid 4 stars.
Mhm.
Um, it could go up with more rewatches, but I think that's a pretty good rating compared to. I mean, I think the average is 2.9. It's very underrated in my opinion. Um, it's funny when you go to Letterbox, and I don't know if this is like always the cover art, but the photo is very, very Bond esque. It's like they're in the Guggenheim, and it's like black and white circles, and it's like it's all black and white, and it's just him and her like shooting, and it's I'm just looking at it right now, and it's
I
very
just
much.
pulled it I just pulled it up on my phone. That is very Bond-esque, you're right.
Right? That's like looks like a Bond film, right?
That
You
really
almost want to see 007 in the international, like.
Yeah, it's very true, yeah, like, the title, and yeah, it's, the very, like, 60s, it's like a 60s stencil look almost to it.
Hmm.
Um, no, that is very, man, that I hadn't really seen that when I went on to Letterbox, but that is very, very accurate.
Hmm.
But yeah, I also gave it a solid 4 stars. And, again, like I said, as I rewatch it over the next few years, it may go up. I think it's very, very underrated. both on like from the critics and from like casual viewers as well. Uh, and and I think that you know, it was very interesting kind of revisiting it with the specter of a new Bond movie coming out in a couple of months.
Yes.
Because sometimes it can be easy to when you see a movie like this where it's, outside of the James Bond franchise, you can compare it to other stuff, but it's like, seeing all the trailers for No Time to Die and everything, it was very interesting. And I definitely feel like, as we were saying before, I think that this film is like a what's the word they use in DC Comics? An Elseworlds
Ah, okay.
yeah.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, this is an alternate universe with a different Bond. But before we finish up, though, one question I would like to ask you is that what do you think of Clive Owen as like a James Bond? Because I know he's been put forward many times for the role over the years.
Um, when Daniel Craig was named as the next Bond, and I started seeing promos for it, I was like, man, they should have got Clive Owen. Like this was years ago, and I've always thought that. Like I thought he just has this swagger to him, and he's got the natural accent, and he's been in these action movies before, and I don't know, I believed him, I just thought he would have been a great Bond, and then Daniel Craig comes in, he's just this brute force type dude that just
Mhm.
I've grown to really appreciate the reshaping of that character to
Mhm.
where he is this brute kind of guy. But I mean, if you were going to stay the classic James Bond, I think Clive Owen would have been a heck of a lot better than Craig.
Mhm.
So
I definitely agree with you there because yeah, Daniel Craig was very much like you said, the brute. The guy who can slug it out with somebody. Where we haven't necessarily seen that before with other Bonds.
the guy
Um,
ran through walls, like legit,
oh.
and defeated, like destroyed and killed an army by himself. Like this is not typical Bond type
No,
stuff. So yeah, this is
uh,
superhero stuff.
no, that's true. I'll never forget when I first saw Casino Royale with that. I feel like it was like a 15-minute, parkour, sequence that I was like, what in the world? I was like, this is incredible.
Uh huh.
Oh, and and I can't help but almost feel, because there's a lot of speculation now of, who is the new, Bond going to be, and stuff because, Craig is ending his tenure. And I hope that we get a more Clive Owen style, one. I would like to see more of that kind of 60s suave swagger. Um, Bond, versus like another kind of like CIA brute type.
Mm-hmm.
Mhm.
Well, I've got my top three. You want to hear them?
I would love to hear him.
All right. Number one. Actually, no. We'll start with three. Um, hold on. Let me pull him up. I get his name mixed up. whether it's Tom or Tim.
Uh-huh.
Tom Hiddleston.
Mm,
Tom Hiddleston's my number three.
okay.
He's got that. Obviously, he's the natural British. He's actually won like a Laurence Olivier Award. I didn't
Mm,
realize that. Very, very,
very much.
yeah. So he could pull it off, I think. Number two, Idris Elba,
Ooh,
and
uh-huh.
I think that's the name that a lot of people have kind of been throwing around. And I mean, he's been an action star. He's definitely really good with it. And I think he can pull it off. But my number one, hands down, and I don't think it's even anywhere close. Um, and nobody's even talking about him being the next Bond. Like, I think, dude, Michael Fassbender, man. Like,
Ooh,
yes. Like,
that's a really good, I don't think I've ever heard him mentioned for Bond, and he'd
no.
be very good.
Like,
He would
he's
be very
really,
good.
yeah. Like, because he's been, I mean, Magneto, come on, man. Like he can pull off the action guy, but he's so suave, man. Like he's perfect. He's perfect for the role. And if
You know
you're
that
listening, anybody who's listening, make it happen.
uh, oh, I have my list here, so I'll give you my list of who I want. Mine is a top 4. So I will give it to you here. So the bottom for me is Idris Elba. Of course, I would I love him as an actor. I loved
Mm-hmm.
him in the BBC show Luther. Um, and there was actually a film he did called Bastille Day. I want to say here in the U.S. it was called The Take, and it felt so much like it was basically his audition for Bond, is what it felt like. And
Nice.
it's actually a good it's a French film, but it's very good. Um, so then my next so he was my fourth. My third choice is, and I've heard him mentioned a little bit here and there, is Henry Cavill.
Okay.
Uh, funny enough, I thought of him, and then I found out later that he actually was considered before Daniel Craig.
Mm.
But ironically enough, they said that he wasn't muscular enough,
He's
which
freaking Superman. Come on.
exactly. So I feel like he would be an interesting one. Then my second choice is Tom Hiddleston, of course.
Nice.
After seeing him in the Night Manager, I really felt like I was like, man, I think this guy could pull this off really well.
Mm-hmm.
Then my top choice, who I would like to see, and unfortunately, I don't think it's going to happen, since his latest film has really flopped. But I would love to see Henry Golding. Uh, as Bond. I think he would be a very interesting take off of him. He's British, of course. But I feel like kind of his Asian ancestry, I think, would be so interesting to focus on because of the British colonial presence in China, in Malaysia and all those places. And I was like, oh, I think it'd be so interesting to kind of, maybe take a viewpoint of Britain's impact in that area in the Spy Game. So I don't know. But unfortunately, since Snake Eyes did so poorly, I don't think that'll happen.
I think most people
So,
that I know were favorable about it. I mean, it's still it's still like in the mid range there. I'm not sure what Rotten Tomatoes is saying, but I'm looking at Letterbox and it's at 2.4, which is not great, but
because I did hear that it had good. I haven't seen it yet. I'm waiting for it to hit Paramount Plus. But I did hear that it had that the action scenes were well done, and like conventional and stuff. So yeah, I'm curious to see it. I know that uh oh, I'm forgetting his name now, but the creator of Snake Eyes liked it, as did Rob Liefeld, from Deadpool fame. He saw an early screening and really liked it. So I don't know. We'll see. But
I liked him in Last Christmas and Crazy Rich Asians,
oh,
and of
both those
course The
movies were great.
Gentleman.
Hmm. Oh man, I forgot about The Gentleman. The Gentleman was a great movie.
It really was, man.
you
Like it's
know.
super super underrated Guy
Hmm.
Ritchie film.
It like flew
Uh,
under the radar. Yeah, but that was a great one, man.
did you ever see A Simple Favor?
I have not. That one's actually been on my watch list for a long time, and I have not seen it yet.
Yeah, with him and Blake Lively and Anna Kendrick.
Mm, great
Uh,
cast.
dude, Blake Lively is a freaking yeah. In this film, she will give you nightmares, man. Like it's just and now my wife and I are watching Gossip Girl, and I've completely turncoated on her. Like now she's it took me a while to get used to her as not being this freaking psychopath. Um, but yeah, like, you just check it out, man. It's good.
Oh, I'll check that one out. Yeah, because I always like to chat with people about different movies, to kind of see what I should be bumping up my watch list. So I will definitely bump that one up. But yeah, I did not know though that Henry Golding was in that one. I
Yep.
really liked Last Christmas as well.
Hmm.
Very very underrated Christmas film.
For sure.
You know. I kind of felt like, I don't know, I feel like the marketing for that might have been a little too misleading. That it kind of made it seem too much like a comedy, when it was a bit more of a drama.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, overall, a very very strong film. But man, so yeah, so before we wrap this up, is there anything, any final thoughts you'd like to add to our discussion and review of the International?
Um, yeah. I just gotta say, man, like if this film, like, there have been a lot of shoot 'em up thriller type films, but none of them have been as pretty as this one. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
Like with all the cinematography and the scenery that they were showing, and the epic Guggenheim shootout, um, and panning the building from the bottom up, seeing the whole layout, and then just the whole, I don't know, that just, I could watch that over and over again. And actually, I went back and watched that shootout with the the director's commentary on, and that was really cool. I could just watch that over and over again. It's about it's like what, like a 15-minute shootout,
Mhm. Yeah, it's
but
like super long. Uh-huh.
yeah, it's really long, but it's, for nothing else, this film deserves all kinds of rewatches because that shootout is freaking epic. Like, I just, I don't, that wasn't really a thought. That was just like, I've got to emphasize that. Like, it was so dang good.
Oh, I 100% agree with you. As we've said multiple times, this film is hella underrated. And yeah, I would recommend this movie to, anybody who likes action, who likes thrillers, and just, even if you don't like those ones, as JB said, watch it for the Guggenheim shootout. It's like it is worth its entire 2-hour runtime just to see the build up and the climax of that sequence. It's amazing.
And
And
hopefully nobody's actually listened this 50 minutes of podcast without actually watching the film, because we've spoiled the crap out of it.
indeed, yes, we've gone over every
But
every spoiler.
this little 2-minute tidbit here would be a good promo of the episode. So
No, that's very true, man. Oh,
yeah.
well, man, I thank you so much for coming on to the episode to chat with me. It's great to find another lover of this film out there. Um,
Hmm.
and would you like to let our listeners know, where they can find you, in your podcast and such?
Yeah. I actually have started a podcast. I've been podcasting for 4 years, or this is my fourth year podcasting. I normally do a sports podcast called the SEC Tavern Talk. If you're an SEC fan, check it out. But I just started a new podcast that has not been released yet because I'm still working on some things as far as distribution and everything. But it's called Manly Movies, and Byron actually joined me for an episode. We talked about Gladiator, which is really really fun episode.
That was
Great
a
film,
great one.
great film too. But yeah, it's basically we're kind of talking about films and how they can relate to us as men, as husbands, fathers, brothers, sons, friends, just what it is to be a man. Like, and there are a lot of lessons we can take from films, and that's kind of what I wanted to do, is because I just have like this passion for film and a passion for discipleship, and I just kind of wanted to mix the two together in this. So that's my new thing. Just look for that to come out within some time in the near future. We'll see. But as far as chatting with me, you can find me on the Facebook group Feelin' Film, FEELIN Film, discussion group. That's kind of where I met Byron, I believe. And that's kind of where I go to talk about film, because not most of my friends are not cinephiles like I am, so that's where I a lot
I,
of
I,
time. So,
I feel your pain. Uh,
so yeah, I'm there on Facebook. I'm not really active in other social media platforms because I don't have time. Um, but yeah, you can find me on there. Just search me, J.B Huffman. I'm on there weekly. Actually, I do a weekly post for it's called FF Weekly Rewind. The admins just kind of gave that to me as a you know, for people to share what they've watched in the last week. So it's kind of fun. I enjoyed keeping up with people on that. So
Mm, very good. Well, guys, definitely go and check out JB's podcast, and definitely join us at Feeling Film, the discussion group. It's a lot of fun. There are tons of great people in there, and great film discussion. And be sure to like and subscribe. To Under the Lens, this podcast. And share it with your friends. And hit us up on social media and let us know what you thought of the episode and what other films you would like us to cover going forward. And we will see you in our next episode.